What's going on, guys? Pete Nova here with Player Profiler. Training camp has officially opened up to veterans. We have guys practicing, rumors going all over the place. Guys are rising, guys are falling. I'm going to break it all down here today with Chuck Bass on Player Profiler. Well, Chuck, it is good to be back. I know we almost kind of took time off in conjunction, right? You took time off a few weeks ago. I took my vacation last week. I'm tan. I'm looking good. I came back with all my teeth this time. I know you had a little bit of a mishap last time you took off, but it seems like you kept the ship rolling, and excited to roll back with you here, and perfect time because training camp just opened up.
Yeah, the whole world basically went to hell with us being gone these last 2 weeks. I know you came back with all your teeth, but I feel like you came back with some sins also, and I don't know if you want to tell the listeners about them or not. We can keep that between us, whatever it is.
Well, what happens in Cabo stays in Cabo, man. But me and my wife do like to party, but we're not into that weird stuff. I'll say that. But let's kick off our first group of guys we're going to talk about today. It's going to be the Chiefs wide receivers, Rashi Rice and Xavier Worthy. I didn't put Hollywood Brown on this list because Hollywood's ADP is so far down that it really just would not be able to reflect how sharp of a drop Rice has fallen and how
Mhm.
much Worthy is starting to tick up a little bit. But let's start off with Rashi Rice, Chuck. And Rashi Rice, we get the news, right? He's going to be suspended this season. It's really just a matter of how many games he's going to miss. And Rice right now, he's down 15 spots in the last 2 weeks. Wide receiver 20, 37.5 ADP.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on Rice? The news, is it shocking for you? And is this a cost that you're you know, willing to take a swing on for Rashi Rice?
I really am. I'm very excited. He's somebody I was already pretty high on and suspicious of his ADP. Suspicious is the wrong word. Optimistic about his ADP even before any suspension news came out. So if we're going to be able to get him at a discount, I think that's going to be massive. I'm starting to imagine going into my drafts with Rasheed Rice being like your first flex. I always thought that fantasy is a race to the flex spot, and you can have a guy like him who I really think outside of the first round has as good a shot of finishing top 5 in points per game as anybody at the position across wide receivers. So I feel really strongly if we can get him sliding. And I like that it's happening now, right? It's not happening closer to the season where you don't really get as many drafts in. You're not getting as much of a discount. I think this is going to end up being one of the best opportunities in fantasy. Now, that's depending on what the actual suspension looks like, of course. But this is a premium player and a premium position on a potentially I'm not going to say high flying offense because, Mahomes' play last year, and we can talk about this when we get to Worthy, was high in EPA, but low in explosion. And I think Rice is perfect for that. So I love where this could end up going.
Yeah, I'm loving the cost. I,
Mm.
I was pretty vocal about staying away from him at his, back of the second, mid-second cost, which he was going a lot this year,
Mm.
especially for guys that are drafting in best ball streets. He was going pretty high, right? But at this current cost, I mean, this right now, you can see the chart here and it says 30, but realistically, he's dropped to 35, somewhere around there. No, sorry, 37. And I actually did a best ball draft last night. I got Rashi Rice in the puppy two.
Mm.
I got him at pick 45, and Xavier Worthy actually went ahead of him at pick, I want to say 37. It was like right at the beginning of the fourth round. And I just, to me, that's like an insane discount to get
Yeah.
on Rice. I mean, it's football. We know guys are going to miss games. Now, it sucks because it's a suspension and it's indefinite, but to your point, I'm expecting this Chiefs offense to continue to work the way it has in the past 2 years, where it's a lot of quick action with the football, getting it out, working in the middle of the field with Kelsey and Rashi Rice. And I honestly think Hollywood Brown is going to be a bigger factor than people realize. So I'm not as high on Xavier Worthy. Worthy's price, he's gone up 5 spots, wide receiver 21. And
Yeah.
honestly, I don't even think, Rice's price is dipped, but once we get to like the next few weeks, depending on how Rice. I mean, they've been raving about Rice already at camp, right? He was a
Yeah.
standout today. He was the most targeted wide receiver in the first day of camp, and it's early, of course, but those two guys have a connection where
Yeah.
we know that he's going to get peppered with targets. He averaged almost 10 targets per game last year in that short stint. I don't really love the cost for Worthy. I was never that high on Xavier
Yep.
Worthy, and I just don't think that they're going to Xavier Worthy is going to be explosive, and that should help with that. But I ultimately think it's just going to open up things more in the middle of the field for Rashee Rice because
Yep.
you have the field stretchers of Hollywood and Xavier Worthy on the field.
Yeah, and this is also the part of the fantasy season, or at least draft season, where we get to be excited about the potential failure of our other drafters and the hubris that exists within our own psyche. So if you're telling me a
Okay.
guy I was already fading is going to start climbing and a guy I've been high on is going to start falling, that's like dream. That's like why I got in the content creation business, is to talk about that kind of stuff. Now I did walk people who drafted Worthy earlier on in the summer. I think his ADP, as it was a little bit lower and suppressed, those are going to end up looking a little bit nicer. So kudos to
Sure.
those guys. Egg on my face. I think that'll be good. But as we kind of, as the season approaches, people are going to be bookmarking so many of my tweets, thinking they can send them the fantasy receipts, because I just don't think you're getting the player. This isn't 2018 Patrick Mahomes throwing to Tyreek Hill. This is pretty much, he had an A dot of 6.3 last year. This is 2020 Drew Brees, 2008 Kyle Orton for my diehards.
Oh God.
Yeah, this is just, they've got a worse offensive line, slightly an older Kelsey, and not a very threatening run game. Mahomes is going to take what's there, and so the emphasis will be on Worthy to create something. And I just don't think he's that kind of player.
Yep, and I'm kind of in lockstep with you. This defense is
Mhm.
really good. The only caveat I would say is that the running game did not really get much better. Elijah
Mhm.
Mitchell could be kind of sneaky, and they did add Brashard Smith. It's still Pacheco. Maybe he can bounce back. But
Mhm.
that offensive line, to your point, I mean, I think Josh Simmons could be a really, really good player. I think they lucked out on
Yeah.
getting him to fall because people were worried about that knee.
Mhm.
But him at left tackle, it's a lot to ask a rookie to protect the best player in football
Yeah.
at the quarterback position, right? They left guard, they just lost Joe Tooney. So you have Kingsley, who was a second round pick last year. Creed Humphrey, arguably the best center in the game at this
Mhm.
point. But then you have him and Trey Smith next to each other. But Jawan Taylor is still really bad, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, he's currently injured right now.
Yeah.
And he was awful. I mean, now
Mhm.
maybe the refs allow him to do that early start off the line.
Yep.
Yeah, but if they consistently call that, it could get worse. But
They're
yeah, I'm
going
with
into
you.
their fourth consecutive year with a different starting left tackle, and it's just insane. And how they're able to make it to the Super Bowl is Mahomes and Reed magic. But as far as like being able to pinpoint what the hell is going to be going on in that area of the field, it's anybody's guess.
But and so that's part of the problem, right? Like Mahomes was pressured a lot last year. I
Mm,
think that's partially why we're not going to see those deep shots. Like
yeah.
people think that the offensive line improved because they got better at tackle. I
Mm,
would say that's probably fair,
mm,
but in the same breath, it's a lot to put on a rookie. I don't think they're going to put Mahomes in harm's way because that defense is still really good. I think they're just going to kind of dink and dunk up and down the field. And this is a dynasty, right? That was going for a three-peat last year, did not happen in part largely to just running into a wall and
mhm.
not being able to scheme themselves out of harm's way, which is what they've been able to do. But they couldn't get past the Eagles because it was just a matchup
Yeah.
nightmare. But speaking of dynasties, let's hear a little bit from the Podfather on our dynasty dominator here at Player Profiler.
Hey, what if I told you there was a Dynasty app where you could get player lifetime values, evaluate trades, including draft picks out to 2028, compare the advanced metrics of two players, look up the sentiment, buy, sell, hold on players? Well, there is a mobile app that has all of that and more called the Dynasty Dominator, and it's $5 in the App Store on Google Play. This is my gift to you, the most affordable Dynasty League domination app available today. And if you already have it, the 2025 class is ready to download. Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah, and honestly, props to Player Profiler. The tools are unmatched, to be honest with you. And I know it's easy coming from me and you, Chuck, but honestly, I use the tools for a lot of things. I do my research. I post a lot of tweets just off of the tools that are provided to us in the data suite. The Dynasty Dominator is awesome, and it's something that I look at consistently when I'm looking at player values and just matching up player versus player because they have everything all there in one shot.
Yep, I've let it completely take over my decision making, and it's turning out to be pretty profitable. So I would definitely recommend that to everybody out there.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next group of wide receivers. They should get a little bit more fun here. We're
Mhm.
going to talk about the Bucs wide receivers. We left off Mike Evans because it's not really an argument between him and the rest of the room. It's really Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, and Chris Godwin right now down 2.5 spots over the last 2 weeks. Wide receiver 37, getting picked around 69. Emeka Egbuka up 2.5 spots, so up in just correlation completely there. He's up 2.5 spots, wide receiver 48, an ADP of 86. I mean, this is pretty easy as to why it's happening, Chuck. It's really just because we've got the news that Godwin's going to continue to rehab with trainers on the side and will not participate with the teams as he recovers from last season's ankle injury. He is starting on the pup, but with camp, but he will have a chance to get activated, before week 1. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
But I mean, are you buying all the Chris Godwin that you can at this current dip? Is Emeka Egbuka's? I mean, I think Egbuka, even with the rise, is still a really affordable cost.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on this coming from the resident, Buccaneers fan?
Well, to quote Shakespeare, and this is all of you all out there, you've had the old bull and now you want the young calf and you're grabbing it by the wiener. No. So look, the thing with Godwin specifically, and I can talk about Ibuka about that as well, is I don't need him to participate in team related activities to begin training camp. As much as I would enjoy him to be ready week 1, I don't need that either. I'm going to do something gross. So I'm going to ask my wife, I'm going to text her, tell her to get the hose ready and the outdoor hose in cold water because I don't deserve it to be warm. I think Godwin could end up being a league winner, especially if the slide continues. He's currently going around Jawan Jennings, Jerry Jeudy, Debo, guys that I think are going to give you some nice weeks, maybe even a nice month, but have such limited ceilings. Godwin in the Cohen system was a top 5 fantasy wide receiver last year. You could make an argument for higher. And this is supposed to be a tribute band to that system with Josh Grizzard running this back. So he's the only guy I think going after wide receiver 20, 21, whatever have you, let alone wide receiver 37, that could give you that same top 5 upside or at least an imitation of it this year. Wide receivers, they get through these ankle injuries. T. Higgins was playing through one all of last year. He was 4th in points per game. Cooper Kupp bounced back from a tough one in 2023 to still be a high target earner. Josh Downs came into the year last year with an ankle injury in camp. And I know that Chris Godwin dislocated his different injuries, but he did it 273 days ago. I think that he'll be ready. And I still think that he's going to be, it's Ibuka's job. Ibuka is in the JSN role for a rookie year where he has the responsibility of fighting off 2 potential monster target earners. And I think both of these guys on this offense are better than Metcalf and Lockett were. And we saw what happened to JSN his rookie year. Now, it's not exactly apples to apples, but they're similar players with similar roles that had similar mountains to climb. And that's my fear for Ibuka if his ADP starts to get in an uncomfortable spot.
With drafting Egbuka for me is going to be all about roster construction. Egbuka goes around guys like Jaden Reed, Stephon Diggs, Matthew Golden, Josh Downs, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman, Cooper Kupp. Those are the receivers that he's sandwiched in between. And look, if I need a safe flex play, sure, Khalil Shakir, Stephon Diggs, those are going to be your guys. They're going to be your bread and butter. Where I don't know what's Diggs has. I mean, we're not talking about Diggs today, but good news is that he's a full participant. So, maybe he's going to be better than just a flex play. Maybe maybe he'll be a wide receiver too. But he's going to have a high floor. So if I'm looking for that high floor, sure. I think it depends. If I have a lot of upside in my wide receiver room, I'm comfortable taking a chance on Egbuka because for me, if so you're right, Chuck, in that when we think about JSN, he was behind 2 receivers that I think were inferior compared to Godwin and Mike Evans. But What I would say is age-wise and injury concerns are much different with these two than it was in Seattle.
Mhm.
Tyler Lockett barely missed any games.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf is a guy that doesn't miss any games.
Mhm.
So outside of last year, he missed a couple, but he generally does not. And that's what actually opened up the door for JSN. Not completely. He was still playing well before
Mhm.
that, but it opened things up for him to really become that number one.
Yeah.
And I think there's a world where, look, I think Mike Evans, that A dot for him is starting to come down a little bit, and that
Mhm.
scares me a little bit. But I also think like Igbuka's going to be on the field regardless. Like even if Godwin doesn't get
Mhm.
doesn't miss a ton of time, like this is a team that runs a ton of three wide receiver sets.
Yeah.
What I would also what I would like to point out is Josh Gizzard is now there,
Mhm.
offensive coordinator, and
Grizzard, as we found out this last week, nobody's ever said his name. I didn't know until a couple weeks ago. Trust me. Yeah.
Gizzard.
Yeah.
But he's now there. And interestingly enough, Jalen Waddle broke the NFL rookie reception
Mhm.
record when Gizzard was his coach
Mhm.
in Miami. Now, difference is much more target competition
Mhm.
for Egbuka than it was with Jalen Waddle. But at the
Mhm.
same time, you still have really good weather. You still have
Yeah.
a offense that's going to throw the football a ton.
Mhm.
So I don't think Igbuka's going to break the rookie reception record. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, utilization wise, Igbuka has versatility. His
Mhm.
high in the slot in college was 548 snaps,
Yeah.
right? And then his high out wide was 229 in 2022, where he played 229 snaps. So he can go out wide,
Mhm.
even if Godwin came back and dominated in the slot. So
Yeah.
I think there's a path for Igbuka. What I would say about Godwin is, you know, that ankle looks swollen, Chuck. That was a pretty recent. That's not spatted up, like
Mhm.
taped up for practice. Like this is like unveiling the uniform shots. Like that right ankle, Chuck, or really left because it's really flipped, but right ankle on the screen. It looks,
Mhm.
and that calf don't look the same as the other calf.
Okay, well, you know what? If you looked at my forearms right now, one of them would be a lot bigger than the other, and I'll tell you, nobody wants to know the reason why. But no, I'm with you. Those are hard arguments against. I like the point you brought up against Grizzard and Miami specifically because all of those targets for Water were schemed up. He was the first look, boom, ball out. Tua gets it to him right away, right to and Fitzpatrick, maybe if I'm not mistaken.
I
So
think it was Tua.
if Ibuka is, and here's the second crux of my argument, if I'm being honest, players like Neighbors and BTJ and McConkey blew so many people's nips off last year that I think a lot of people have forgotten how hard it can sometimes be for rookie wide receivers to adjust. We have examples of Marvin Harrison, Worthy, even honestly last year, all of the 2023 class, and even a lot of the 2022 class with London and Wilson. And some of those guys were clear number one options. Sometimes, how good is he going to be in his run blocking? How good is he going to be? How quickly is he going to pick up this system? I think he's too good of a player to fail at ADP, even if his ADP goes up a little bit, because he's supremely talented and he's in a very good ecosystem. I just am wondering, how is that going to fit in if we get healthy, ramped up Chris Godwin and back end wide receiver one, book it no matter what, Mike Evans. At that ADP, I start to look towards guys like that I think could give me contributions for 17 weeks of the season. So Tony
Sure.
Pollard, Shakir, Diggs, Downs, Hawkinson, maybe even like a Mahomes or a Kyler. Pick your poison, whatever which way you want to go with it. But I'll tell you what, at wide receiver 48 right now, I might be smoking something if you're fading that.
Yeah, and that's why I said roster construction is so important.
Mm,
I get a little tired of listening to people say like upside, upside,
mm,
upside. It's the most important thing
yeah.
because to your point, Chuck. Look, if your wide receiver room, is pretty risky. Like before you get to where Igbuka is being drafted, drafting
Mhm.
Igbuka, I mean, you may have to depend on a flex guy there, and like
Yeah.
you may have to cut Igbuka if you can't start him, right? So
Yeah.
like roster construction matters. In big
Mm,
tournaments, I understand taking high upside because you're drafting so many teams and you want to win the big cash. But in managed leagues where you have to make decisions on a week by week basis, if you're drafting Igbuka, you have to be comfortable with saying, okay, I'm not expecting him. I mean, granted, if Godwin doesn't play for the first 4 weeks because he is on the pup, then maybe you are
mm,
hoping and expecting. That would be just gravy, honestly. If
yeah.
Godwin didn't play, that would be like, okay, great. Like I'm gonna get some production there. But like if I don't, I'm okay with it because you're playing the long game with him where like maybe he can have a really strong back half of the year
Yeah.
as these veterans go through a full season and they've missed time in the past, which we saw. So
Yeah.
Another thing I would say is Bucs ran 11 personnel at one of the highest rates in the NFL last year. They were top 10 there,
Mhm,
71% of the time. So, that's three wide receivers on the field. So, like,
mhm,
I think he's going to walk in. And now, look, Jalen McMillan, it's no slight to him. I think that gets lost in a lot of this where, I think we kind of just say Jalen McMillan's a nobody now. And I think he's
mhm.
going to be involved. But I think it's more for the backup to Evans more than it is a backup to what
Yeah.
Godwin and Igbuka are going to do. Baker Mayfield averaged 33 passes per game last year, and their defense did not get much better. I expect them to be high scoring games in a shitty division
Mhm.
with bad defenses all across the board, and I expect and good weather. So I think Igbuka is. He's priced very well. I'm not taking a chance on Godwin, Chuck. I think we
Mhm.
can close this out, at least for
Mhm.
me. You've kind of shared that you like Godwin, and that's fine. I'm not taking the chance on Godwin. I like players around him better, to
Yeah.
be completely honest with you. I like, I'd take Chris Olave, who I think we
Mm.
talk about guys that could finish top 5. I think Chris Olave has wide receiver 1 potential for sure if he stays healthy. Which is the same argument we're talking about with Chris Godwin, right? Except
Yeah.
Olave's in a worse system, worse quarterback. But less target
Yeah.
competition. So,
Yeah.
anything else that you want to add before we close this out?
No, my hope is that we can get both of those guys in back-to-back rounds if we start posting more pictures like we just got. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Again, a lot can happen from now until then. And to your point, Godwin knows the system.
Yeah.
So as long as he's healthy, that's really the
Mhm.
biggest thing. I don't really care that he's missing time. I
Yeah.
think it's better for Igbuka, just give him more
Oh,
reps
I,
now.
I know what I wanted to bring up. Here we go. The Bucks this year are going to play the Falcons, the Texans, the Eagles, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Lions, the Bills, the Rams, the Cardinals, and of course the Falcons, and then the Dolphins. We're talking about, I mean, what are the over-unders on those games going to be? And
Pretty
are they too low already? So, you can find whatever you want in this Tampa Bay passing attack.
Yeah, there's going to be value all over the board, I think. And that's not even talking about the running backs who will get the
Sure.
ball in the passing game as well.
Yeah.
Now, probably the more fun and last topic that we'll talk about
Mhm.
is going to be the 49ers wide receivers. All three. This is just an absolute disaster of a room right now. You hate to see it. I'm not avoiding this room
You
because
love to see it.
there's just too much potential in this room, Chuck. I mean, honest to God, I mean,
Yeah.
it's frustrating, but like one of these guys is going to likely be extremely effective, or it's just going to be George Kittle. But
Yeah.
before you go, Chuck, let me just go over where these guys are right now.
Sure.
Ricky Pearsall down 1.7 spots.
Mm.
So he's becoming cheaper. I know we say down and up, and it's kind of confusing. Down, obviously, for us means cheaper.
Mm.
He's picked 76, wide receiver 41. Brandon Ayuk down 2.2 spots, pick 91, wide receiver 49. And then you also have Juwan Jennings down 3 spots, pick 64, wide receiver 35. And George
Mm.
Kittle is the biggest beneficiary of all of these guys in this
Mhm.
room. He's up 3 spots at 38.9, still tight end 3. Chuck, what are we doing with this room, man?
It's looking like we're potentially fading it into oblivion. Like you said earlier, I think punting it into the sun unless we're able to get some salvage out of the guy here. If I want any of them, I hate to say it, it's probably going to end up being Brandon Ayuk, and
I
here's the only reason why. And I don't really want him.
I know.
I don't. Okay, this is begrudgingly, but we get paid to do this. I have to give an unbiased, professional, or personal opinion and be honest. Like just when he got out of the doghouse too, he's about to get euthanized. I just don't know. Like, and there's so much negative to be said, right? Like, what do we do with a guy who was already looking like he was struggling, coming back from a major injury to a team that doesn't necessarily seem to want him that badly, and he doesn't necessarily seem to be on? I just think there's a very realistic scenario where like he's coming off of all pro honors just a couple of years ago, where he ends up being the missing piece to an offense that is probably going to be running on George Kittle at 20 or George Kittle at 31 and CMC at 45 years old. For 17 games, like someone's going to have to come back and shoulder the load. And if Ricky Pearsall is not ramped up by week 1, which I think is the most important thing to his development, is to get time without Brandon Ayuk on the field, to be the third guy on this offense, because the third guy on this offense has had it easy street throughout this entire Shanahan run. It's why guys like Kendrick Bourne get paid in New England. We've seen Marquise Goodwin, Pierre Garcon, like I said, Kendrick Bourne. We've seen them come through and put up okay numbers. I think Juwan Jennings in that boat. Juwan Jennings is not that good of a wide receiver. And I'm going to quote Jeff Bell from Football Guys here directly. If you remove his 11 catches, 175 yards, and 3 touchdown game, which is an all-time what the fuck game and a major outlier from his career, he followed the wide receiver 44 last year in a year where they didn't have anybody but Kittle. So
yeah,
as far as like what's going on here with these guys, I would like it to be Pearsall because I think I could see Pearsall turning in maybe like a 2021 Ayuk season, which was kind of like 800 yards, feeling his role in the offense. But I feel like most likely what ends up happening is that when Brandon Ayuk is able to come back, he's able to become another top 12, top 15 wide receiver in the NFL, maybe not for fantasy, and then translate that into some production as the year goes on.
Yeah, so let's at least let me, for the viewers watching, just the recent news on all 3 of these guys.
Yeah.
Ricky Pearsall, right? They're expected to activate him within the first few days of camp, right? So he tweaked his hamstring in a workout back in May, per David Lombardi, a beat reporter on the team. The only thing with Pearsall that it does worry me about the hammy. I know I think he had a hammy last year too. On top of obviously getting shot. Ayuk, they are encouraged about him and his knee recovery from ACL and MCL. So he tore both last October. However, Ayuk is not anywhere close to having a concrete timeline to return to practices. Brandon Ayuk, pencil it in, not going to be there for the first 4 games. I would put a lot of money on it that I don't expect him to be there. I just don't. I even if he starts practicing a little bit, I don't expect them to have him out there. Juwan Jennings hasn't requested a trade per Kyle Shanahan. That's the news. He wants a new contract, but today, first day of camp with veterans reporting, first thing, well, not the first thing Shanahan said, but one of the first things in his press conference was that Jennings has not requested a trade. So good news. But that's a lot of what's happening with the movement. And then you have George Kittle, who's up 3 spots, which is actually pretty significant because that's up 3 spots for a guy that's already going in the first 4 rounds. He's now pushing himself into that definite 3rd round guy where you were getting him in the 4th at some parts, and going up 3 spots when you're already that high is a significant movement, right? And the market does feel like they do not want any parts of this offense. What I would say is this. First of all, I'm in love with Christian McCaffrey this year, right? Like that's
as you should be. Yep.
Yeah. But like, I mean, this schedule for McCaffrey is amazing. I mean, the first 4 games of the year, Seattle, then Saints, Cardinals, Jags. And then at the back end of the year, it's Browns in week 13, bye week, and then the playoffs. He's got the Titans, the Colts, and the Bears. I mean, that's an amazing playoff schedule. But like, those defenses are not great against the pass either at the back end of that schedule. Except I think the Colts might be a little bit better this year, and the Bears are okay. I mean, they're not world beater defenses. But my thing is this: if we have McCaffrey, who's now in the first round, that's where he's getting drafted, right? And you have Kittle, who's pushing up, right? Brock Purdy is a value too. Like, I think it's just a matter of like, we just need to find, like, is there going to be a consistent guy in this offense at the wide receiver position outside of Kittle and McCaffrey? And if there is, like, that at these prices is going to be massive, in my opinion. It's just a matter of figuring out who it's going to be. And if you're kind of worried about it, take Ayuk then, who I hate, but like, wide receiver, you're getting him at pick 91. It's practically free. And so at that point, like, you know, take the chance. If I'm taking a chance, it's Ricky Pearsall for me in this offense, who is cheaper than Jennings by a whole round. And I don't think that should be the way it is, but it just is. But I think there is somebody in this offense, Chuck, at wide receiver that's going to be really good. And maybe it's not a wide receiver, high-end wide receiver too, but they're going to give us a really strong stretch, and I'm going to want a piece of that. I just don't know when, but I also think Brock Purdy as well, extremely undervalued. He's going outside the top 12 for quarterbacks. This offense is going to be good this year. That's really my point. CMC's back. Kittle is healthy on a new deal. This offense is going to be good, Chuck. It's just a matter of figuring out which pass catcher, if any, and maybe the answer is Kittle. Maybe it's neither of those 3 wide receivers. Maybe it's Aquarius St. Brown, the podcaster, Amon Ra's brother, who just signed, which it doesn't feel great. But Whatever.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? What else you got? What else you
St.
got?
Brown, one of our contemporaries. This is one of those ones where I'm trying to guess now what I'm going to be thinking in January, where I'm like, okay, what did my heart want in July that my head did not want to acknowledge was possible? And I think it's that Brandon Ayuk, who had very strong flashes his rookie year, had a weird doghouse year 2, and had 2 very, very strong back-to-back seasons in an offense that traditionally did not have strong receiving consistency numbers other than an outlier Debo year. Is this still a guy who could potentially be a difference maker for this offense? And if I'm getting that guy at wide receiver 49, 48, whatever it may be, I think that's somebody that could move the needle in a way that I'm not sure if in 2025 Ricky Pearsall can do. Maybe in 2026 or 2027. But I just know that Ayuk kind of has that beast mode that he can activate in this offense, and I'd love to be wrong about that. But I think the way that this shit goes sometimes, that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah. So I do want to preface this. I'm not drafting Brandon Ayuk. You are. That's fine. I want nothing to do with Brandon fucking Ayuk. I know I just said like if it like then take Ayuk. Like that's me just saying like I just gotta get a piece of this offense. If you're not taking CMC or Kittle, like just get a piece. But like I don't like typically I really don't like drafting players that are already injured or already have issues. Like I'm not touching James Cook, who I think is going to be a head case and like holding in. So like with Ayuk, if he slips outside of that top 100, which I think is very, very, very possible, then maybe that starts to become a point where it's like, okay, I don't want to deal with the headache. I'm not in love with with him, and I don't know how to feel about what he's going to do this year. But at some point, enough's enough, and you got to take him. And at that point, I think he's going to fall outside the top 100. And at that point, that might start to get me back in on drafting him. I took him in fast draft, Chuck. I'd pick like 120 when the rabbit opened up.
He's my highest exposed player on fast draft.
Yeah,
I can't help myself.
Maybe the listeners that like play on fast draft like have heard us crush Ayuk so much that they're fading him and it's opening a buy window. But all jokes aside, I mean like that's 10 teams, not even 12, and he's going at pick like 120. Like in a 12 man, that's like pick like 140. I mean, it's just crazy value. So, but look, this was fun. We're just at the tip of things starting to heat up. Next week's show is going to be a ton of fun as we kind of get more and more news. We're really excited to kind of get this show rolling as the heat of training camp begins. Chuck, you want to say anything else before we sign off?
It's good to have you back, bud.
It's good to be back.
Yeah. Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.